welcome to today's On This Day in Tudor History. I'm Claire Ridgway. I'm here with you every day bringing you a Tudor history event, whether it's a coronation, a birth, a death, an execution, or a marriage, a battle, you name it, and I've got it for you in this year, 2019. So lots of Tudor history for you to get your Tudor fix. And the bells are ringing out for me. I don't know whether you can hear them. Okay, I'm taking you back to 1554 today, which of course was in the reign of Queen Mary I. But on this day in Tudor history, the 19th of May 1554, on the 18th anniversary of her mother Queen Anne Boleyn's execution, the future Queen Elizabeth I was released from the Tower of London, where she'd been a prisoner. Now, she wasn't released into complete freedom, she was released into house arrest. Now, you may remember my 17th of March video. If you don't remember that, then perhaps you can go back and have a look at that one. But if you remember that one, you'll know that two members of Queen Mary I's council, Queen Mary, of course, being the half-sister of Elizabeth, they were sent on the 17th of March 1554 to go to Elizabeth's home at Whitehall Palace and to escort the 20-year-old Elizabeth from the palace to the Tower of London after Elizabeth had been implicated in the recent Wyatt's rebellion, which was led by Sir Thomas Wyatt the Younger. Now, on that day in 1554, the 17th of March, Elizabeth had written her famous Tide letter, which I tell you about in that video. It's called the Tide letter because as she wrote to her sister, her half-sister, the tide of the Thames turned, meaning that she couldn't be escorted to the Tower until the following day. So it gave her a bit of extra time. It didn't stop her being imprisoned, but it did give her extra time. She was taken to the Tower on Palm Sunday, the 18th of March 1554, and she was held a prisoner in the Royal Palace, not one of the, not like the Bell Tower or the Bloody Tower or anything like that, or any dungeon. She was imprisoned in the Royal Palace, which no longer exists. You can't see it today, in the inner ward of the Tower of London. Now, this was the same palace that had been renovated by her father, King Henry VIII, for her mother Anne Boleyn's coronation, which took place on the 1st of June 1533. Anne spent, before her procession to Westminster from the Tower, she spent a night or two at the Tower of London in the Royal Palace, because that's where monarchs and their consorts would go before their coronation. That's the traditional place. And so the Tower wasn't just a prison, it was also a lavish royal palace, and we quite often forget that. Of course, this royal palace, these royal apartments that Anne had stayed in before her coronation, were also where she was a prisoner in May 1536 before her execution. So these rooms that Elizabeth was imprisoned in, these must have, well, not brought back memories because obviously Elizabeth wasn't there, but she must have thought about her mother being a prisoner there in 1536. And she must have wondered if she was going to go the same way. Elizabeth was interrogated while she was in the Tower of London about Wyatt's rebellion, but she did nothing to incriminate herself. She denied being involved, and the rebel leader, Sir Thomas Wyatt the Younger, went to his death on the scaffold, proclaiming Elizabeth's innocence. Now, Mary I's council argued about what to do with Elizabeth, and in the words of David Starkey, Mary dithered as well. But it was eventually decided that Elizabeth should be released from the Tower, that there wasn't evidence that she was involved in the rebellion, so she should be released, but that she should be carefully watched and she should only be released into house arrest. On the 19th of May 1554, so this day in history, Elizabeth was escorted from the Tower of London and taken by water to Richmond. Now you'd think that Elizabeth might have been happy about leaving the Tower, but she wasn't. She was scared. She was convinced that she was going to be assassinated that night at Richmond. After all, it would be very convenient for her half-sister Mary and Mary's council if Elizabeth was dispatched by an intruder, something that Mary could not be held accountable for. Rather than her half-sister having to execute her and having that responsibility, if, they let her out, but during her journey or while she was at Richmond, she got bumped off, then, Mary could say, well, I did all I could and it wasn't my fault. So Elizabeth had what must have been a rather sleepless night that night at Richmond, and then the next day she was taken from Richmond to start her journey to Woodstock in Oxfordshire. Now this was a long journey. This was a 4-day journey for Elizabeth. And Elizabeth's popularity was demonstrated on this journey because people that were on her route lined the streets to see Elizabeth. They gave her gifts, so she ended up having cartloads of things because people were giving her gifts because they loved her so much. So she was very, very popular, and that was demonstrated on this 4-day journey. At Woodstock, Sir Henry Bedingfield was to keep Elizabeth securely under house arrest. She was to be treated well, treated with respect, but she was not to converse with any suspicious person or be allowed to send or receive any correspondence. Now, Elizabeth was well aware of how closely she would be watched, and in a message to her household, she referred to a verse from the Gospel of St. Matthew. "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." So she knew that her servants and herself, they would have to keep their wits about them. They would have to be very aware of the fact that their enemies were watching everything that they were doing and would use things against them. So they'd have to keep their wits about them if they were to survive. Now, an etching on a window at Woodstock, which is linked to Elizabeth, although it's not entirely sure that Elizabeth did actually write it, but it says, "Much suspected by me, nothing proved can be, quote, Elizabeth the prisoner." So, yes, that's I love that etching, the story behind that. So perhaps Elizabeth did etch it, onto the window while she was in house arrest at Woodstock. On the 17th of April 1555, after nearly a year at Woodstock under house arrest, Elizabeth was summoned to the royal court to attend her half-sister, the Queen. Now, Mary believed that she was just about to give birth to her prince, her longed-for prince, but this baby never came because Mary had suffered what is thought to be a phantom pregnancy. Some people think that perhaps she had cancer of the ovaries or something like that, but she'd convinced herself that she was pregnant and that she was just about to give birth, and she wanted her half-sister in attendance, but the baby never came. On the 18th of October 1555, Elizabeth was finally granted permission to leave court for Hatfield, Hatfield being her own estate, where she could get on with her life without being under house arrest, without being watched all the time. And that must have been such a huge relief for her. I can't imagine how she'd felt knowing that she was being watched, knowing that she had enemies that wanted to bring her down. And of course, it was at Hatfield that she was informed on the 17th of November 1558 that her half-sister, Queen Mary I, had died, and that she was now Queen of England. So Hatfield is well worth a visit, by the way. It's just such a beautiful place. So well worth a visit if you want to see lots of Queen Elizabeth I's portraits. And although the oak tree where Elizabeth is said to have found out that she was queen, isn't there anymore, there is an oak tree that was planted by our present Queen Elizabeth II, in honour of that previous oak, in honour of Queen Elizabeth I. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please give it a like if you have. You can click round about there to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can hit the bell to be notified as videos go live as well. But rest assured, I'll be back tomorrow with another Tudor History event for you. See you then. Take care. Bye bye.